a very accomplished scientist, a dear friend, and a mentor of many of our students, long-standing collaborator, Professor Dr. Rafa Siddiqui from Virginia, is visiting us on our request, and he's here for a number of reasons. Perhaps the most important one is to build capacity of our scholars in some very important areas. So today's workshop is all about scientific writing, which is extremely important. And as you all understand, that no matter how good research you conduct, if you do not really know how to package that, then it's not going to be something which any decent journal will publish. And that requires logic, that requires understanding, that requires skills in writing. But at the same time, it actually requires lots of common sense that what you are presenting is what people would like to see out of a scientist who consider to be someone with rationality. Dr. Rafat has delivered these workshops before and has helped many scholars in developing their skills in scientific writing, including patents, publications, and thesis. With a request, Rafat Bhai, please.
Thank you, thank you, Dr. Iqbal, for your. Thank you very much, Dr. Iqbal, for your kind introduction. And I think we have 2 sessions, so hopefully, I think I hope that these students learns some tricks. And as I said, it's not really had to do with your English; it's just how you organize yourself. Okay, so we will continue from where we left yesterday.
This question also is a hand raised by someone. Maybe you would like to address it.
Okay, now we can see what it is.
This was on a joint screen.
Okay. So how many participants we said? Okay. I think, yeah. So I've got some of the comments we had yesterday and day before yesterday, and most of the comments people are asking to have a copy of the presentation. So what I will do is that I will make a I will make a copy and give it to the in charge here, and then everybody will get a copy of the presentation, like in the form of handouts. Okay. So just to recapping what we have gone all this yesterday. We started from how to basically organize your tables, right? So any question from there? So we had there, figures and how to organize figure legends.
One important observation is that very often people present the same thing in table, graph, sometimes in plots also, and so there are various different presentations of the same data. How acceptable or palatable it is for a referee?
Well, I think you have to present data only once, like either in figure form or in table form. Sometimes some of the journals allow that you can present, if you already presented in figure, you can present same data in a table form. Some people do it, which is kind of acceptable, as long as it's not the exact copy. So I've seen people doing that, and it's somewhat acceptable. But I think, if you cannot really do more than 2 times. But I've seen papers. I've honestly seen papers where only the title is changed and the paper is exactly the same.
That is academic misconduct.
There's a misconduct, and the person usually get fired. So don't ever try doing that. Okay.
Also, because This data is also explained in descriptions and details and results and discussion sessions. So it's actually 3 times.
Right, right. So we talk about, how to create the paragraphs, how to link the paragraphs, and then so and I have given you examples, and we work together on that, right? So hopefully you have some kind of idea, right? And then important thing we talk about, how to write a research proposal, right? And a synopsis, and what are these? These are the terms you have to really define. So this is something you cannot really cut and paste from anywhere. You have to think about, introduction. Okay, you have to get information from the literature, but what are your long-term goals? Why you want to do this research? You have to really sit down and think about it. What are the objectives? How you going to achieve your long-term goals? What is your hypothesis? What you're expecting? And then, your hypothesis must be based on certain rationale. So what are the rationale you have to explain? And your proposal. So you have to describe, you have the research team, the mentor, what the experience that mentor has, working in 5 years, 20 years in the area, have published that many papers, has, all kind of equipments and chemicals. So shows that, you'll be able to complete your research on time. And then you describe specific aim, significance, what is the significance of your research, and innovation. Why your research is new. You have to think about ways where you can convince somebody that whatever you're doing is not the repetition of something that people already have done. So you have to introduce the innovation, and then some kind of description of what you expect from your research. Okay, and it may or may not be, the results you get, because that's what you are expecting. But when you do the experiment, because if you already expect the result and that's what the result you're going to get, there's no need to do the research. So expected result, just give you the critical thinking, that what are you thinking? You're doing the experiment and that's what you're expecting, but and then how your research would have implication, it's clinical implication, it's a social implication, whatever, right? So you have to just like a paragraph describe the implication of your research. Okay, and we talk about strategies for writing, and we prepare, as I said, to have at least 4 drafts, right? And we went through that how you organize your draft. So the first draft is a very difficult one, and as I said, you have to work, you have to allocate time every day, maybe 1 hour, half an hour, but you have to be very consistent. So if you do a little bit every day, you will won't feel tired. But if you want to do spend 3-4 hours in a day and then don't do anything rest of the week, when you come back again, then you forget what you have started. So do it in a consistent manner, right? And as we said that continuity, balance, start the other writing first, like materials and method, and then we describe all that, right? Second draft, you go back again, try to polish it, and remove the words which are not really, you need to add. Especially as we go into some certain exercises like, use of this, that, it, and which. You have to really go back again and make sure that they are used properly, right? And then uh, we have gone through all of these, right? And we have gone through these examples, like, where to use which and all that. So, anything any question from the last yesterday lecture? Okay. If not, then we can go ahead and start where we left, right? Okay. So you all got. So some of these, the exercise we did yesterday is the one which people make very common mistake, right? They use it, right? So trying to see where. Okay, so we stop here, right? Now we're gonna continue, and can we move this bar because I cannot see it. Can we minimize this? Here you go. Okay. Now remember we talk about that, you're going to have first draft, right? Where first draft, you're going to put all the things together, introductions, materials and method and everything, right? And this, where what you're going to do is that at that time, you're just putting all the information together, right? So second draft, when you start second draft, then you have to really pay attention on certain things like, wordiness, if there are too many words, always less is better, right? If you can explain something in less words, is better than you use too many words. So you go back and again check your sentences, right? And we have some examples here, right? Now, for example, here it said there now is a method which was developed by Jones in 1973 for analyzing the growth of rotifer populations, right? There's nothing wrong in this sentence, right? But the thing is that the information you want to give here is about the person who developed the method, right? There's a method, that you use in your for research, right? So you want to make it more concise. So John 1973 developed a method to analyze the growth of rotifer populations, right? So see how you can remove some of the words and exactly have the same meaning. Or for example, the sample size was not quite sufficiently large enough, right? Again, there's nothing wrong in the sentence, right? But it's too wordy, like the sample size was not quite sufficiently large enough. So if you want to change this sentence, how would you change? Any suggestion, any idea? And I said you have to say something, because when you're saying something, whether it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter, but at least you are using your brain, you're thinking, right? Sufficiently, the sample size was not quite large enough. Yeah, that's possible. You can at least decrease one word, which is not required, and anything else. Not sufficiently large enough, quite, because quite doesn't really mean much, right? Quite could be, different for different people, right? Some people may not that much would require, some really small amount that would be enough for them, right? So it's not really describe the quantity, right? So the way we can do, the sample size was not large enough, right? And sufficient, again, the sufficient doesn't really mean how sufficient, right? So these are the words sometimes people use which has no real meaning, but they are wordy, right? They just distract the reader, right? So you just say sample size was not large enough, or you can say the sample size was too small, right? It's very simple to write instead of writing the whole thing, right? Now, the root cap serves to protect the cells of the root meristem as the root is growing through the soil, right? My guess, there's too long sentence, right? Too many words, right? Any suggestion how you can reduce it? Okay, the root cap protects the cell of root meristem as the root grows through the soil, right? So simply they want to say that as the root goes into soil, right? What happens that the root cap serves to protect the cells, right? So the root cap protects the cells of root meristem as the root grows through the soil. Okay. The eggs were blue in color and they were covered with a large number of black spots. Okay. Any suggestion? Okay. Large. You guys have lunch today or not yet? Okay. Yeah, blue is, everybody know blue is a color, right? So you don't just say blue color, right? So legs were blue, very good. Legs were blue and covered with black spots, right? And then you get the whole message there, right? So something like, the bags are blue with many black spots, right? So there's kind of things you have to go in the second draft, right? So don't think that you wrote the first draft and you can give it to your supervisor to check, right? It's your responsibility to, go again and polish it, right? Okay. So there are sometimes, there are wordy words which you can use, and the word to make it shorter. Like there are some, for example, like people often write like this: a second point is that, right? You can replace this is second or secondly, right? Secondly, and then you can continue your sentence instead of saying a second point is that, and then you continue, right? More often than not, right? We can replace this with usually, right? It is apparent that, okay, and this is very common. I've seen in so many places. You say it is apparent that, right? So you can just use the word like apparently, right? At the present time, okay. So the word you use is to replace is now, okay. In previous years, okay. Short form is like previously, right? Owing to the fact that, okay, and this is also something which is very commonly used because of the fact that, right? You just say because, right? You don't have to, say the whole, all these words, right? Because of the fact that, right? Simply because, right? In the light of the fact, because, right? It may be that, replaced by perhaps, right? These observation which seems, okay. And this actually, again, this word is often used very much. Like it seems, or so you have to use more scientifically, like suggest, right? These observations suggest, right? Because seems doesn't mean seem is like something you're looking. It is okay. There's nothing wrong with the sentence, but the most appropriate word is suggest, right? To suggest one of the problem, right? One problem, right? It is only a very small number of cases, right? And this is also, it's heavily used. So it said rarely or occasionally, right? You see this occasionally, right? Okay. In the possible event of, right? Simply instead of saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words, you just say if that happens, right? In the possible event of that, it means just say if that happens. So you just replace by if, right? An additional piece of evidence, okay, further evidence supporting that helps to support this, like support this, I mean, now this hypothesis, right? That support to, sorry, the whole sentence is this helps to support this hypothesis. It just says simply this hypothesis, right? So some are these examples, right? Okay. Now there's certain other things which people very often use. They say it is also worth pointing out there. Okay, don't use it. Okay. Uh, Before concluding, another point is, I mean, what it doesn't really mean much. Like before concluding, okay, so you say it already. Why don't you say it, then before concluding, right? Don't use this, right? And then this thing, it is interesting to note, right? It is very, very heavily used. Like everybody uses so much. Like in every thesis, you see paragraph after paragraph. It is interesting. It is interesting. Man, it's something interesting to you, it may not be interesting to other people, right? Okay, and why it is interesting? Either you have to give the reason it is interesting because, right? Okay, so in some places.
Pakistan 92302.
Okay, sorry. Okay, okay. So it is interesting to note that, right? So again, don't try to not use this word interesting because this is heavily used. It is interesting. It is interesting. It is interesting. It's like all over in thesis. Typically, people have like more than 30, 40 times saying it is interesting, right? Or in paper, again, reviewers really don't like this word. It is interesting. Okay. All right, so these are some of the examples. Okay, now we work on punctuation, right? And because, as I said, the punctuation can make meaning totally opposite, right? It says something, but if you don't use proper punctuation, it means something totally different, right? Totally opposite, right? So punctuation help make your writing clear and understandable, right? Used incorrectly, they may distract, annoy, or confuse the reader. Okay, now the most commonly used punctuation is comma, right? So use comma to separate all items in a series, including the last one, right? Remember, a very first example I give you that explain about the John, Mark, and all that, right? That how without putting the comma, it can have some serious consequences, right? So these days, you have to, like here in the example, like unlike Moses, fern possesses two roots, stems, and leaves, right? In the all English, you can just say stem and leaves, right? No comma, right? But now these days, you have to put a comma before and, right? So it's separated all the things which are in series, like Moses, a fund possesses two roots, stems, and leaves. Okay, so I hope this is clear. This one place you use comma, right? Okay. Now, second time or another place you use the comma is to separate introductory material from the rest of the sentence. Okay, what introductory material is that, sometimes you say like an example here, right? Although egg cases were rare using Henderson method, right? None of the eggs hatched, right? So although egg cases were rare, right? So this is the introductory thing, right? That you're saying that, well, you use this method to rear the cases, but what you're trying to say is that none of the eggs hatched, right? So this is introductory. Always whenever it's although, when you finish the sentence, then you have to use a comma, right? Anything start from although, you have to, because when you say although, it means you are introducing something, right? Okay, although this happens, comma, but then you explain your sentence, right? Okay. Now, during the 1980 breeding season, right, bullfrog were sexually active from early June to late July, right? Again, during the 1987 breeding season, right? So this is the introductory sentence, right? You put the comma and then you explain. Okay. Nevertheless, okay, and again, this is some kind of introductory thing. These data suggest, right, that male selection in species is based primarily on female choices. So these are some of the examples, from biology course. So nevertheless, again, you have to put a comma whenever you use nevertheless or furthermore or moreover. You have to use a comma. Okay, because you are kind of trying to continue from previous sentence to the next sentence, right? Okay. So so far it's clear where to use comma, right? Okay. Now you have to use a pair of comma, like start of comma or at the end, right? To set off insertion or elements that interrupt the flow of sentence. Like you're trying to say something, and then by the way, you put that information, right? So you have to separate that out into commas, right? And the way you figure out how to put commas is that if you take that stuff out, you can still have your complete sentence. So for example here, right? The situation is different. However, okay, on isolated island with lower species diversity, right? So again, this however, you can take it out and the situation is different on isolated island, right? Sentence still we write sentence, right? Okay, this explanation, right, first proposed by Hess, 1964, comma. So you see, we put a comma here and put a comma here, right? It is still widely accepted. So it means if you take this thing out, you still have the same meaning. You have the clearly same message, right? This explanation is still widely accepted, right? So first proposed by Hess, it's just an introduction, is like additional information. So if you want to give any additional information, you put that information within commas, right? Okay. Now, other thing is that use comma to separate independent clause linked by a coordinating conjunction. Okay, what is coordinating conjunction? Like when you use word and, but, or, for, nor, so, and yet, right? So these are the things that you use to connect one sentence to the other sentence. This happened, but, right? And this happened, and you say, like, or this happened, or you say nor, or this happened, so, right? So whenever you use this one, you have to use a comma before it, right? So like here, right? Many studies have been made of feeding preferences in spider, right, comma, but few have been done under natural conditions, right? So again, see, we have used this in a coordinating conjunction, but here, so you have to use a comma before it. Okay. Now, one thing is called comma splice. Okay, when you have two complete sentences, right? What it is like, in these sentences, like, you're using comma where, the one sentence is complete, right? The other sentence is actually a continuation of the second sentence, right? But if you have two sentences, right? So don't separate two sentences just simply using comma. Either you have to use a conjunction to add together, like and, or, all there. So some of the examples here is like, comma splice is like do not use a comma on its own to join two independent clauses. Such error is called comma splice, right? A comma splice also results when you join two independent clauses with a common comma followed by a conjunctive adverb, right? Such as however, moreover, furthermore, therefore, and nevertheless, right? So I'll give you an example. Some of these, right? For example, here, right? It says horsetail usually grow in moist habitats. Okay, so this complete one sentence, right? Some occur along dry roadsides and railway embankments, right? So this is another two sentences, right? So just separating these two sentences is a comma. That's why it's called comma splice, right? Or something like this. Now, horsetail usually grow in moist habitat, comma. However, some occur along dry roadsides and railway embankment, right? Again, this is it's again because this is a complete sentence because you can read like however some occur along dry roadsides, right? So these are two sentences, right? You don't have to use, rather you have to modify, right? Okay, so for this you have to use a semicolon. Okay, like here, horsetail usually grow in moist habitat, right? Semicolon, however, and comma. So whenever you use this term, however, right, you have to always use a semicolon before and a comma after it. Okay, always. This is like, and this is not only for that, but things like all these conjunctive verbs, right? However, moreover, furthermore, therefore, and nevertheless. When it comes in this sentence, when you start a sentence, there's no problem because you can start like however, capital H, right? Moreover, capital M, comma, okay. Furthermore, capital A, furthermore, and comma, and then you can do the sentence. But when this falls in this sentence, right? So you have to separate first sentence using a semicolon, right? Use this conjunctive adverb and comma, right? So like here, horsetail usually grow in moist habitat, semicolon, however, comma, some occurs along dry roadsides and railway embankment, right? So that's one way to do it, right? Okay, don't have to always use however. You can just simply, use a semicolon here, like horsetail usually grow in moist habitat, semicolon, some occur along dry roadsides and railway embankments, right? Again, this is like two sentences, and you usually use these two sentences when they are linked to each other, right? Well, like, the second sentence is explaining the first sentence, okay? Then you can use semicolon. But if they are two different things, then it's better to what? How to change it? You just use a full stop and make it two sentences, right? So you don't have to really force to join two sentences, right? If you're not sure, always make it to two sentences, right? It's easier to read too, right? Okay. Now, horsetail usually grow in moist habitat, comma, but. So you adding a conjunction here, right? But some occur along dry roadsides and railway embankments. So there's different ways you can join, sentences, right? But you have to pay attention on the punctuation, right? Some places you can just use comma, some places you can use semicolon, some places you have to comma and semicolon both, right? It depends how you join the sentence, right? If you use this conjunctive adverb, then semicolon and the comma, right? If you want to split into two, and if the sentences are related, just separate by a semicolon, right? Or you can use a conjunction here, right? Comma and the conjunction. Okay, here. Okay. Now, make one of the clause a dependent clause and separate the two clause by a comma, right? So now dependent means like, all the horsetail usually grow in moist habitat, right? Then you use a comma, okay? Some occur along dry roadsides and railway embankment, right? That's how you can fix. Okay? Or last one is just use as, make it two sentence. Okay, so if not sure, then always, it's easier and it's probably safe just to make it two sentences. Okay, so there's the use of comma, right? Any question about comma? So hopefully you are expert now. When you write, so you know where exactly and how to use the commas. All right, okay. Now the second punctuation is semicolon, right? Okay. Now semicolon is to join again two independent clauses, right? Not linked by coordinating conjunction, right? Like, if you're not going to use and, but, or, for, nor, or, yet, right? So you have to just use, okay. So bacteria reproduce bacteria reproduce very rapidly. right? Semicolon, many species can divide once every 20 minutes under favorable condition, right? But then this has to be like, explaining each other, right? We're talking about bacteria reproduction. This you're saying they reproduce rapidly, and you're explaining that how rapidly, that like every 20 minutes, right? So you can use, have two sentences, and you can separate them by a comma. I mean, sorry, a semicolon, right? Okay. But if you want to use a comma, then you have to use a conjunction, right? You can say bacteria reproduce very rapidly, but, or, but it's like, it's rapidly, or just in case if some, if you use but, it has to be something different, So the best thing is just use the semicolon. Okay. Now, use a semicolon to connect two independent clauses joined by a conjunction adverb, right? Such as I explained, like, however, moreover, nevertheless, furthermore, right? So here, whenever you use moreover, so you have to a semicolon and the colon, right? That means comma, right? Okay, these data are consistent with those of Allen. Semicolon, moreover, okay, comma, they suggest that pH may be a more important influence than previously believed. Okay, so you have a pretty good understanding how to use comma and semicolons. Okay, same as like, okay, use a semicolon to clarify the meaning of a series of items containing internal commas. Now this is very important because a lot of people actually make mistakes like here, like, they have like things separated with commas. Okay, and then there are other things like a sequence, like for example here, right? Films were made of courtship and mating behavior, right? Semicolon, aggressive interaction between males, comma, including chasing, butting, and biting, right? So see how these are separated, like chasing, butting, and biting. So this is separated, right? So this is all one thing, right? So to separate this from rest of this, you have to use the comma. I mean semicolon, right? So they are like different things, like courtship and mating behavior. I mean, there's one thing you separate, like the series, okay? Semicolon, aggressive interaction between males, comma, and then all these things separated, right? And parental behavior by females, particularly funning and egg retrieving, right? So all these, when you have a series of commas, so you separate one series of commas from other series of commas by a semicolon. Okay. Now this next thing is colon, right? Now this use of colon is very easy. You always use when there is a series. Okay, so you use a colon to introduce item in a series, right? Birds are distinguished by following features, right? Now you are providing the series, right? A four-chamber heart, feathers, light bones, and a sex. Okay, so what it is, there's a series of things. These are you are providing, right? So there's a list. So whenever there is a list, you always use a column, right? There's one way to write it if you're writing, or if you want to write like this. Words are distinguished by following features, right? Then colon, and then you kind of put the list. So whenever you're putting a list, you have to use a colon, right? That's very easy, right? There's no other use of colon unless you have a list, right? Okay. Now, however, do not use a colon before a series unless the colon follows an independent clause. Okay, what it means is that uh, dandelions are in the same family as daisies, I can read this, chrysanthemums, sunflowers, and hawkweeds, right? Now, there is a series here, okay? But what happens that, do not use a colon before a series unless the colon follows an independent clause, right? Now, there's no independent, it's not an independent clause, right? It's just a series, right? And families as. So you do not have to use colon. You have to just say dandelions are in the same family as, and you go, right? Okay. You understand? This is a series two, and this is a series two, but this is like, you have to say following features, like, and then you provide the list, right? But when it's continuous, okay, then, okay. The most common insects at site A were mayflies, dragonflies, flies, and butterflies, right? And again, word you have to just continue. You don't put, though there's a series here, right? But this series is different like this, right? Okay. Any question about it? I mean, it's maybe a little confusing, but it's just like, because um, here is uh, like it can go continuously. Okay. Okay. In both example, colon should be deleted, right? You just continue the sentence. Okay. Now you can use a colon between two independent clauses when the second clause explains or clarifies the first one, right? Like the Cranston Lake study site was most suitable for incubation studies, right? Net size were abundant and brooding birds were rarely disturbed by road traffic, right? Okay, so basically all these are explaining the first sentence, right? But the Cranston Lake site was most suitable for incubation study. So he's saying it is most suitable for incubation study. Why? Because the nest size were abundant and broadening birds were rarely disturbed by the road traffic, right? So you can just use and then you can just explain. Okay, that's another use. Okay, so these are the very common punctuations, right? So you have to pay attention, especially when you're going second draft. First draft is really difficult because you are just cutting and pasting and putting things together and want to complete the thesis. But then what people do is that once they've done it, then they give it to supervisor to do the correction, right? Which is really a lot of work for supervisor, right? And the thing is that you do not understand or do not learn anything because you are just not doing a critical thinking, which is an essential part of your PhD status, right? So the thing is that you've done the work, research work, right? Which is that training that you are trained for performing certain essays, right? To make certain progress. Okay. But the next part, so this is only your training to learn the techniques. Okay. But the second part is training, your mental training, right? Your brain activity, right? So you'll be able to do critical thinking, which is essential part of your PhD too. And the critical thinking comes when you put your data together. You try to explain your data. You try to compare your data from other studies, right? To show how it is different, how it is not different, and what are the reasons it is different, what are the reasons it is not different, right? And same as like we explained earlier that introduction, you put things together, but then you have to each paragraph you have to go back and again see you are introducing, you're making a context, right? You're making a theme for the paragraph, you introduce, write this description, and just don't abruptly end this paragraph. Last sentence should be a concluding sentence explaining whatever, right? So whatever happens, and then you conclude that all these observations suggest that this drug may be acting through this pathway, right? For example, you said that that somebody has shown that okay, drug A causing activation of PI3 kinase, and then the B also shows the activation of PI3 kinase, and the C also shows, and then so it looks like the PI3 kinase could be the main target of all the drugs that belong to this family, right? Okay, so you just put a last concluding sentence, and then you have to introduce this next paragraph from that, so that you continue the same thought. So if you're saying there's a key target for different drugs, right? Now you introduce some kind of target or drug, then you can start. Okay, so there can be but in some studies there are more than one target, right? Then you explain what are those targets. PI3 kinase is a target, but other studies shown that web kinase may be involved and all that. Then you conclude that although PI3 kinase looks like the main target, but it is possible that this drug may be acting through multiple targets, right? So you just you think about it, what you're doing, and you make your own little bit your own interpretation, right? So that's your second draft, right? And then again, what you do, you also go through punctuation to see where your comma, you're using your comma, where you're not supposed to use comma, how can you join two sentences together, because cut and paste, is good to put the information together, right? But then you have to modify, you have to connect the sentences together, you have to sentences move around so that it doesn't look like a plagiarism, right? It looks like, okay, you got the information and you are using your own wording to explain that observation. All right. Now, what we do is that the other things in writing is that we use the scientific name of organism, right? So each species of organism has just one scientific name, right? It consists of two parts, right? The first wording known as the genus, and the other one is the epithet. Okay, so like for example, we have here is like, Plumularia cetacea. Okay, it's always very difficult to read, biological names, right? Okay, so what it is, so there's a organism name. So in this case, is you always need to italicize. Okay, and then the genus name should be start from the capital. Okay, and the epithet is like in small letters, right? So that's how you describe the name. Okay, and you have to always write in full, right? But what happens that if you have to use this again and again and again, right? Describe the species, so then you can just capitalize just this one p dot, and then you set the same name, right? So give the full name, full scientific name first time. A particular species is referred in the text, right? In the later reference to this species, you may abbreviate the genus by its first letter, right? It's still capitalized and italicized. So you just say P, okay, okay. But there may be some confusion because some of the genuses has the same, like, you have like Spirillum volutans or Staphylococcus salivarius, right? So now they both start from S, right? So when you say S dot this one or S dot this one, so it's very confusing whether this belongs to this one or this belongs to this one, right? In this case, you have to, it's always safe to just spell out the whole thing. So you just write the whole thing to avoid confusion. But if you use only one species, then there's no problem, right? So also spell out the generic name of at the start of the sentence, or else reword this sentence, right? So for example, this Streptospirillum, sorry, what is it? Minicium was the first common dragonfly at site A, right? So see, don't start anything with the abbreviation. Always start things with the, you write the full name, right? Same as not only the generic names, but try to avoid anything starting from abbreviation. Okay, you can spell it out completely, and then you can use the abbreviation later on. Okay. All right. Now, other thing is that timing. Okay, because sometimes you have to say that, okay, we started experiment at 7 a.m. and finished at like 12 a.m. So always use this 24-hour scale because there's no confusion, because sometimes 7:30 could be a.m., it could be p.m. Yes. Your question? Yeah. Organisms. Mhm. Mhm. So when the two organisms are so close. Mhm. Uh-huh. Yeah, you have to completely write it then, so that there is no confusion. Because if you abbreviate it, right, then it would be always a confusion. So it's better to just completely describe. Is it clear? That's what your question is. Just what that's what you are asking. Okay. Yeah, you just completely describe the full name, right? Okay. So time always used 24-hour scale. So there's no confusion. Okay. And as we talked earlier about clarity, that this will clear it, and exactly what time you started the experiment and what time you end the experiment, right? Now, use of symbols and abbreviations. Okay, commonly used in biology, right? So these are the lists which you can get from any site. So if you have to use the units, then use the what are the standard symbols. Like, don't make your own symbols, right? And I've seen that people they just make themselves new symbols, right? They make abbreviate things, whatever they think is right, but there's something which are standard, right? So these are the standard symbols, and you have to use those. Okay. Now we will have a little bit exercise, right? Okay. So this is an abstract. It's not an abstract. Actually, it's abstract for somebody asking for um, uh, asking for manuscript to be submitted for a journal, right? So there's an announcement. Now the interesting thing is that this was written by from a European country. Okay, so their English is also not as good, right? So don't feel bad that you guys are you guys actually write Pakistani Indians they write a lot better. So now go through it and see what's the problem here, right? Okay, and how we can change it. Okay, so let's read. It says, can you read it? Can you see it, or it's too small? Maybe I can enlarge it. Trying to see how to enlarge it. वो है वहाँ पे जो है I know there's a way to enlarge it. You know how we can enlarge? Just not read it. How do you do this? Control and then remove. Okay, well, thank you. I learned a new thing. Okay, now can you see now? Okay, it's readable now. Okay, or you can make it more. Now I know how to do it. Okay, now it says studies that focus on the function of food compounds in inflammation and oxidative stress has opened a new window into chronic new communicable diseases, disease prevention, right? Okay, this sentence doesn't really, you read it, but then you really feel like there's something, it's like, it's not, it's not singing, right? It's not going in flow, right? So studies that focus on the function of food compounds in inflammation and oxidative stress have opened a new window into chronic non-communicable disease prevention, right? So if you want to have to fix it, how you fix it? And you can there's no one way. You can there'll be multiple ways you can do it, right? Everybody have a little bit different way to do it. So any idea how do we do it? Multiple studies. Okay. Like what? So multiple studies. There were. Okay. Now they were very interesting. Okay. Now there are a lot of people they start this sentence like there is or there were, right? Try avoid doing that, right? So don't start a sentence. There are many. Well, sometimes you cannot, but sometimes not use it, right? So studies that focus on function of food compounds, right? So it says the studies which are focused on the function of food compounds in inflammation and oxidative stress has opened a new window, right? Okay, into chronic non-communicable disease prevention. Okay, so my first thing is that I don't like this word like a new window, right? So studies, how we can say it, like studies focusing, right? So we can remove this word date, right? Because we know that date, there's a specific way we use date, right? So because date is now, describing only the studies that, right? So studies focusing on the function of food compounds, right? Okay, in inflammation and oxidative stress, right? Okay, have open, what we say instead of any word to replace a new window. Open new paths. Okay, yeah, you can, you said that. Or
Portal.
what is it?
Portal.
Or
Portal.
Wharton. I'm not sure what it means.
It means ways, different ways.
Wharton. Yeah, okay, open Wharton. Okay. Dimensions. Yeah. There's, you can, there's a lot of ways you can do it, right? So studies focusing the function of food compounds, right? Okay, in inflammation and oxidative stress has opened, I would say now have opened has uh, opened a new window instead have or provides new opportunities, right? Okay, into chronic non-communicable disease prevention, right? So it's again, it's like it's like the thing you have to note is that you want to know what, okay, like here is studies focusing on food functions, right? Okay, and again, function of food, I would say food functions because that's easy to read. Like studies focusing on food functions, or hang on, is a function of food compounds. Okay, it's study focusing on function of food compound. Again, I think studies focusing uh, okay, on the function of food compounds in inflammation and oxidative stress has uh, has have provided opportunities, right, for preventing chronic and communicable disease, right? Because when you say open a window or not, so then the next thing is for what, right? Okay, so then next thing is that for prevention, right? Then you understand, and then it's easily flow, right? So we say studies focusing on food compounds and inflammation and oxidative stress has provided opportunities for preventing chronic non-communicable diseases, right? So it's actually it's flow a little better, right? Okay, now CNDs are non-infectious and transmissible with a long duration and slow progression. Okay, this is a nice sentence to fix because this sentence is not really right. Okay, now CNCD. Okay, what is wrong with this sentence? Great. Okay, sentence start from abbreviation. You can do it. Whatever you want to do, you can do it, but it's not really right. That's not the way to write. Okay, so CNDs. So you have to reword this sentence in a way that it should not start from the abbreviation, right? Either you spell it out, but if you spell it out, then it looks like like you just explain this here and then you explain it again, right? So we have to rephrase it. Okay, so any other idea? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one way to do it. Yeah, yeah. As I said, there are multiple ways. There's no fixed way, but you have to make it better, right? I mean, you can. This is also nothing grossly wrong, but we do yes.
Always that we can't start a sentence with a movie, right? For everything, or is it just we have before you said they were at dot.
Yes.
That was an abbreviation for something.
Right.
In this case, it is going to be used in many multiple times.
Right. Yeah.
Right in the many.
Yeah.
So like you cannot ever start a sentence
No.
with an
No, you don't typically start. Yeah, unless there in some exceptions, like like DNA, right? It's so commonly known, right? Unless it's very very known, then you can because DNA is now become like a noun. Nobody says deoxyribonucleic acid, right? It's DNA, right? So there's in that case, something is very very known, RNA, mRNA. That you can start, but try to avoid it. If you can avoid it, that's the best, right? So any
long duration of slow progression of the disease and non-infectious non-transmissible.
mm-hmm. What we going to do here? So, the reverse, like you put the CNCDs are require long duration and slow progression, and then
From the long duration.
long duration.
And slow progression of the disease are non-infectious and non-transmissible.
So you say long duration and slow progression of CNCDs are non-infectious and non-transferable. Yeah, this, you can actually. But the easy way is that you can just make like the hair. So that you are looking for here is like there's some two multiple description, right? Okay. So thing you are looking here is you can think about that you can use some of the information as an introductory information, and then you can make a statement, right? So you are what you're trying to say that they are non-infection and not non-transmissible, right? So that may be introductory, right? Okay. And what you're saying is that they are for longer duration and then they progress slowly, right? So you can although CNCDs are non-infectious and non-transmissible, right? And then you put a comma, right? Okay. They are often require long duration and slow progression. Okay? So you just fix it like now. Although CNCDs are non-infectious and non-transmissible, they need longer duration and slow progression, or they progress slowly for long duration, and often takes long duration, right? So there are multiple ways to polish this, right? But the reason I was trying to show is here that when you read this sentence, so that's what you're probably going to do in your thesis, right? When you write, no, you're going to take some going to read a paper, you're going to take the sentence, right? That sentence not necessarily a right sentence, although it's already published, somebody has published it, right? And you believe me, there are a lot of mistakes people they publish because they all kind of people write different ways, right? And sometimes depends how you have taken the sentence. Sometimes you just take these two sentences, you just take the first sentence and cut and paste and all that. But then you have to go back and then you look at some of these things. Now it's the multiple things. Then you can say, well, you can maybe put this information as an introductory and then explain. So here they're basically what they're saying that these diseases are non-infection, non-transferable, but they are also grow slowly and takes long time to develop, right? All right. Okay. Now, example of CNCDs include obesity, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, chronic kidney disease, osteoporosis, sarcopenia, Alzheimer's disease, and many cancers. Okay. Want to change this in any way? Just look at me, all right, because it's just there's nothing much. It's just giving the examples, right? Okay. Yes, and this yeah, you can do it, but I would not do it otherwise because this sentence will become like very, very long, right? Okay, and then the long sentences, sometimes people write it and they are okay in terms of their construction. But what happens that it gets so boring, like you read it, and then by the time you read the last sentence, you forget what the first sentence, right? So I would suggest maybe divide into two sentences if there's a long sentence. Always like I've seen people write a sentence with 5 lines, right? It starts and it just goes on and on and on and on, and it's really boring. And it's just that they want to write it and forget about it. Their job is done, right? But that's not. You want to write something that people enjoy reading, right? So, I think this is okay. Example of CNCDs include obesity, cardiovascular. Okay, now the prevalence of CNCDs is rising rapidly, and WHO projections show that CNCDs that are expected to increase by 15% globally between 2010 and 2020. Okay, so again, any way you want to modify it? Right. That's one. Yeah. That's a one way to do it. Like you can just you're already saying CDs, and because you are continuing, then you don't have to say it again, right? So the prevalence of CNCDs is rising rapidly, and WHO projections shows, their threats are expected to increase by, right? So you still have the same thing, right? But what I would do, I will just actually stop here, right? Because sentence is really getting, a lot bigger. So instead, the prevalence of CNCDs is rising rapidly, and either I can use a semicolon and then say the WH2 projection show that CNCDs, or they show that the deaths are expected to increase, right? Or put a full stop and say the WH projections show that the deaths are expected to increase, right? So there are multiple ways to do it, right? Okay. Now, the effect of dietary compounds on the metabolic pathways related to CNCDs are currently under investigation. Okay. How you want to modify this? No, affect is when you are, is affect is a verb, right? So, and this is a noun, the effect. So it's like a noun of, the effect of dietary verb, right? Dietary compounds, right? The effect of dietary compounds on metabolic pathway related to CNCDs are currently under investigation. Okay, first thing is, what part you don't like in the sentence? Anything you don't like? I mean, this sentence is okay, but it's the effect of dietary compound on the metabolic pathways. But now you have to use sentences because you're, yeah. Yeah, because you're talking about, yeah, this you can also do that too. Yeah, you can just group CNCDs because you're talking about CNCDs. The thing I don't like is are currently under investigation, right? Because are currently under investigation look like there are people really busy doing working on it, right? Okay, so what is we have to replace this with some kind of better word, right? So the effect of dietary compounds on the metabolic pathway related to CNCDs are focus of recent studies. Okay, so I mean there are studies recently done, but it's not that are currently under investigation, like everybody's really investigating, or so it's just looks strange to me, right? So the effect of dietary compounds on the metabolic pathway related to CNCDs are focus of recent studies, right? Okay, or you can start more recently. Uh, there's a what you can say that recently studies has been conducted on the effects of dietary compounds on the metabolic pathways of Cs, or related to CNCDs, right? Something like that, right? These developments have led traditional nutrition counseling towards a more complex approach based on the modulation of gene expression by food, thus providing a new perspective on nutrition science, right? Again, this is a long sentence, right? These developments, okay, have led traditional nutrition counseling, okay, towards, so they're saying that this is a traditional nutrition counseling towards a more complex approach based on modulation of gene expression by food, right? Okay, thus providing a new perspective on nutrition science, right? Then again, it's like a very long sentence, right? So how you modify it? So these developments, right? Or you can say these studies, okay, or recent studies has shifted the use of traditional nutrition counseling towards um, like uh, complex approach based on molecular modulation, based on modulation of gene expression by the food, right? So these development or these studies or recently the nutrition, the traditional nutrition counseling has been replaced by a complex approach based on gene expression, right? You don't have to say by food again because we already, saying that nutrition counseling, right? Okay. thus providing a new perspective on nutrition science, which is providing, okay, that is like, or which provides a new, so you just, you're giving, at the end, you're just giving more information, right? That, okay, just an extra information, by the way, this was happening, but is replaced by this, and then which actually provides a new perspective, right, on a nutrition science. Okay, so there again, as I said, there are multiple ways to do it, but then you have to just see how it reads better, right? Okay, now vitamin E isomers, okay, are well known and have been studied for a long time, establishing a plethora of data in the literature. Okay, now all of a sudden you see vitamin E isomers, like, you say, oh, vitamin E has isomers. Okay, so and then there's no information how many isomers, right? So this sentence is really like, that's what, you have to look for, that when you start a paragraph, right, it has to be some introductory sentence to explain, like, all of a sudden you say vitamin E isomers are well known and have been studied for a long time, establishing a plethora of data in the literature, right? Okay, so here you have to, what kind of sentence you have to provide. You have to provide an introductory sentence of what are vitamin E isomers, right? Okay, and then, we have vitamin I. So vitamin E typically called as tocopherols. I don't know if you know how much you know about vitamin E, but they are tocopherols. They have alpha, beta, and gamma, right? So there are 4 tocopherols, and they are tocotrienols, right? So they have alpha, beta, gamma tocopherol and alpha, beta, gamma tocotrienols, right? So these are the vitamin isomers, right? Okay, so you have to say, vitamin E isomer, comma, including alpha, beta, gamma tocopherol and alpha, beta, gamma tocotrienols, right? So now a person knows that, okay, we're talking about vitamin E and these are the isomers, right? So you just put, comma, and then put that information and the comma, right? So vitamin D isomers, okay, comma, alpha, beta, gamma tocopherol and alpha, beta, gamma tocotrienols, comma, have been studied, okay, for some time, like for a long time, again, for long time. For some person 1 year is long enough, for some people maybe 10 years long enough, for some person maybe 100 is not long enough, right? So it is like, not very, explanatory, right? Either you have to say since, 2 decades, or from last 2 decades there has been a lot more investigation on vitamin E, right? Is biological effects, right? Something like that. You have to be more specific, like last 3 decades, right? Then people know that you're talking about last 30 years, right? Last 50 years, right? Try avoid using things like, for a short time or long time, right? You understand why I'm saying this, right? Because it doesn't really give you much information, right? So here, like, it's for a long time. Okay, well, how long? Okay, so vitamin isomers, right? Or you can say alpha, beta, gamma tocotrienols or tocopherol and tocotrienols, or and you can say vitamin E isomers, right? You can either switch both ways, right? Has been studied for, for last 2 decades or something like that, establishing a plethora of data in the literature, right? So again, it's like, too wordy, right? There are too many words, right? So you can just short it down. The vitamin E isomers, such as, they have been studied in last, few decades, and then establish a plethora of data in literature, right? So again, what kind of data and what kind of literature? So you have to say, it's providing something like that. These vitamins have been studied, right? And they're providing, and the data for their characterization, their physical and biological properties is known, right? So people know that what kind of data you are, is known. So simply like, vitamin isomers has been studied for a while, and as their physical and character and the biological properties are mostly known, right? Okay, support the protective role of tocopherol. Support the protective role of tocopherol and tocoinols in disease prevention in people with adequate nutrition status. Now, this sentence is really not a complete sentence, right? Because the full stop here is support the protective role of tocopherols and tocotrienols. Now, all of a sudden, like, what is tocopherol, tocotrienols, right? You never heard this before, right? This person is talking about vitamin E here, okay? And then all of a sudden, well, a person who's working in the area of vitamin E probably knows what is tocopherol and tocotrienols, right? But if they don't know, they say, well, we're talking about vitamin E and what is this, right? But if you already introduced here, right, the vitamin E are tocopherol and tocotrienols, then you can continue, right? Support the protected role of tocopherol and tocotrienol in disease prevention in people with adequate nutrition state. I don't understand this sentence at all, right? And believe me, I've seen people writing this kind of sentences in their thesis, right? It doesn't like the word is missing and there's something missing, and I don't know what this person is trying to say. Support this, they're probably saying that these are providing some protective effects in disease prevention, right? So that you can say that vitamin E has been studied, and then their biological functions are becoming apparent, and it is becoming clear or it is becoming apparent that tocopherol and tocotrienols, they have some preventive effect in for certain diseases, right? Or they can prevent certain diseases, right? We invite authors to submit original research and review articles that address the progress and current understanding of the response of human gene expression to tocopherols and tocotrienol intake, and the effect and interaction of gene polymorphism on absorption, transport, and nutrient metabolism. Oh my God, I go to sleep after reading this sentence, right? You don't understand what exactly, by the time you read this last one, you actually just forget what was the first sentences, right? So when you read it yourself, do you feel comfortable after So if you don't feel comfortable, so don't write it, something like that, right? Don't just go on and on and on, because it's easy for you to just write it, forget about it, and you say, well, it's just a thesis, nobody going to read it and all that. But this thesis is just an exercise for you to know how to write, but eventually you're going to write the papers and things and all that. So once you develop a habit, you know how to write, then you will always write better, right? So the thing is that here we invite authors to submit original research and review articles. Okay, that address, and again that we can replace with article addressing the progress and current understanding of the responses of human gene expression, okay, to tocopherol and tocotrienol intake, right? So this is again, I will probably split into 2 or 3 sentences. So we invite authors to submit original research and review articles addressing the recent progress, right? And recent progress in this area. Okay, and I will stop here, right? Okay, we will, say something like, we encourage authors to write about effects of tocopherol and tocotrienols on gene expression, their intake and biological activities, such as absorption, transport, and their metabolism. Something like that, like more simplified, more clear, right? Okay. The effect exerted on human organism by tocopherol and tocotrienol. I mean, a human organism, again, I think it's a human. Why are you saying organism, right? So there's 2 words, right? So you can take the word out, right? The effect exerted on human organism by tocopherol, tocotrienols, right? Now, there's another thing, like, if you notice here, this person is saying expression to tocopherol and tocotrienols, right? And here is tocopherols and tocotrienols, right? So it's lacking consistency, right? So if you're using tocopherols, then always use the term tocopherols, right? If you're talking only tocopherol, then just use term tocopherol, right? So you have to be consistent, using. And I have again seen this a lot of time that people just become very inconsistent. They say something and then they change it, right? Okay. The effect exerted on the human organism by tocopherol and tocotrienol. Source of vitamin E, at the end, when you already finish reading all, then you know that tocopherol triquinol is the source of vitamin E, right? This is a good thing to do. Like, I mean, information is there, but then you're supposed to tell this ahead of time, upfront, that, okay, these are the tocopherol, tocotrienols are the vitamin E, right? Okay, so it says the source of vitamin E appear to be manifold, right? Okay, so what? It's like, it's okay, manifold. Okay, then what? So you feel like you're missing something, right? Okay, like you eating something, and then you're expecting to have dessert, and you're waiting for the dessert and say, "Oh, there's no dessert today." Right? So this is that kind of same kind of feeling. There's a sentence there, and then what, right? So you have to adjust them when you fall in what ways, right? Whether they're acting on the receptor side, so it's maybe like they the better way to say is like vitamin. So this tocopherols and tocotrienols affect human body in multiple ways, right? Or their effect can be manifold via acting through acting as a membrane component, activating second messenger system, inhibiting enzyme activity, in the inducing gene activation, right? So these are different places where they can act, right? So it's manifold, but then you have to really tell, what, you have to explain what manifold means, right? So there's some of the things you have to really think yourself, right? You can, because this you can cut and paste, and believe me, you can get that kind of sentences from other articles when you put it together, but you have to really think about that what you're doing is making sense or not, right? Okay, whatever. I think I have to 2:40. Just say you have point at 4 o'clock today, right? Okay, so so vitamin E deficiency has not been as well documented, right? However, cases describing vitamin E deficiency have not been as well documented. Research, and now there's a two full stops, right? Then again show the negligence a person has written and now really proofread the article by itself, right? Okay, in recent years, there has been a continuous increase in studies showing different biological activities that result from different form of vitamin E. And again, this sentence is really doesn't really give you any new information. There is no message, just a space filling, right? That you have to write 2 paragraphs, and actually this is if you take this out, there's nothing much in there, right? Okay, so vitamin, you say, however, cases describing vitamin E deficiency have not been as well documented, right? In recent years, there has been a continuous increase in studies showing different, and you already said here in the beginning that has been studied, and there's a lot of literature describing the biological activity, right? So you're just repeating yourself in a different words, right? So these are some of the things, like it's a very poor way of writing this paragraph. All right, okay, so what we do, we go to the next one, and I don't know how to do the next one now. Okay. Okay, that's what I tried myself. I just wanted to give you some examples, right, so that you can know how to find out what's wrong with the sentence, right? Okay, if I have just said that that's what it is and that's how I correct it, you probably understand something, but the idea was that you find out what's wrong and try to fix it, right? So it's like studies focusing on food compounds for their function, right? Food compounds for their function in inflammation and oxidative stress have opened opportunities to prevent or treat the chronic non-communicable diseases, right? Okay, although CNCDs progress slower and take longer to develop, right? They are non-infectious and non-transmissible, right? Examples of CNCDs include obesity, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, chronic kidney disease, osteoporosis, sarcopenia, Alzheimer's disease, and several types of cancer, right? The prevalence of CNCDs is rising rapidly. And WHO projections show that CNCDs that are expected to increase by 15% globally between 2010 to 2020, right? The effect of dietary compounds on the metabolic and signaling pathway related to or pertinent to CNCDs are currently a topic of great interest. Okay, the recent developments have shifted traditional nutrition counseling towards a more complex approach based on the molecular and cellular effects of individual nutrients, right? Such as agonist antagonist interaction with cell surface receptor, regulation of enzyme activity, modulation of gene expression, right? These findings has provided a new perspective of nutrients in nutrition science research, right? So you see how it's flowing, and then when you read, you understand one sentence. When you read this next sentence, then you understand. So everything is flowing in a sequence, right? So because I had more time when you write, then you can go back and correct many times and write Okay, so alpha, beta, gamma tocopherols and alpha, beta, gamma tocotrienols, collectively known as vitamin E homologues, right, are well known and have been studied in past, establishing a plethora of data in the literature, right? The alpha tocopherol and to some extent the gamma tocopherol are the most investigated vitamin E homologues in human studies, right? In addition to their well-known antioxidative activities, these vitamins possess several other important biological activities. The purpose of this special issue is to comprehensively review all the important biological activities of vitamin E homologues to support the beneficial role of tocopherols or tocotrienols in disease prevention or treatment. We invite authors to submit original research and review articles that address the progress and current understanding of tocopherols and tocotrienols. Authors can write on any topic pertinent to vitamin E homologues structure and function. See, now I have like several commas, so I use the semicolon, right? However, and again, whenever you use however, you have to use this semicolon and the colon, right? Topic focus on analysis, intake, absorption, and metabolism, cell signaling, gene expression, and variation in activities due to gene polymorphism are desired, right? So when you read, you don't like, you understand everything, right? What is about, right? But when you read the other paragraph, you also get some knowledge, but you really don't, catch much, right? Sorry, somebody. Where I may have missed some. Alpha, beta, gamma. Where? Oh, okay. These are, yeah, I should have put it in the comma. Yeah, that's right. You can put it, but because sometimes, these are only two, then, if they're more than two, then you have to use this comma for all three. Because two is, very clear, there's one and two, right? But when there are three, so the one and then two and three can go together if you don't put the comma, right? So, but when there are two, there's okay not to put a comma. That's a very good question because that's maybe confusing sometimes. Yeah. So for two you don't have to. Okay. So I'm gonna take a break for maybe 5 minutes now. Okay.
Sir, I have a question in the original version of this paragraph.
What is that?
Go back to the original paragraph. सर यहाँ एग्जाम्पल आप CN series अगर हम यहाँ लिख दें different diseases including these diseases are associated with CN series.
Yeah.
सर यहाँ मेन फोकस जो है CN series है ये चेंज होता है मतलब यहाँ लास्ट में आता है तो इससे कोई फर्क तो नहीं पड़ता.
Yeah, well, you want to use right, but typically you want to say things up front, right? Because people will read this, so what? Then you say, oh, these are CN series, right?
Yes.
So you can see this disease such as obesity, cardiovascular, diabetes, coronary heart disease
Are associated with
are the example of CNCDs, right?
Yes.
So there's like, they're reading all and then
last.
they say, oh, they are CNCDs, right? So the information is coming very late,
Yes,
right?
sir.
So you want to put the information first, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
you say
Those are my
CNCD.
question,
Yeah.
right? Our focus is here at CNCDs.
Uh-huh.
So we to include this first.
They increase
Yeah,
first,
yes,
yes, yeah.
yes.
We want to get the information first and then
Yes.
say, well, okay, the CNCDs, then they know, oh, all these diseases are CNCDs. But then you say, all these diseases CNCDs, and then you say, oh,
Yes.
they are CNCDs. So it's kind of
Yes, sir.
delayed the information, right? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, hopefully, it's helping you guys.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay.
Yes, I'm Sharmeen. I have given you my paper.
Oh, you're Sharmeen.
Yes, sir.
Ah,
So
okay.
sorry, sir, I cannot meet you yesterday.
No.
Actually,
Actually, the thing is that, frankly, this paper is written very badly.
Okay, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry to say, but
No, sir.
but the thing is that the things not really, things are missing and all that, and I don't know what you're trying to say because I want to sit down with you and show you, how, the, what you were trying to say and
Because
how
like,
to
I
make.
don't know about your schedule. I called me yesterday as well when you called, but you have come for the workshop and I waited in the workshop and then you have some other meeting
Okay.
for the.
Yeah. So maybe I think what we'll do is that. So you want to meet after 4 o'clock today?
Sir, whenever you have time.
I mean, it's up to you. You miss your point.
So I usually go late because I am in my own.
You sure? So how do you go then?
I have transport.
You have time. Okay. I don't want to, miss you because.
No, sir,
I mean,
no.
okay, we can, because we cannot finish the whole thing in one sitting, right? So we go part by part, right? So we go some, and I have done already some to go over this, right? And then, then I have some questions, so maybe we can sit down 4 to 5. Okay. Okay. Yeah, no problem. All right, okay. Disconnected?
No, hide this one.
Okay. Still connected, is
Yeah,
it?
it's still correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so we're going to continue. Okay, now we got some of the common mistake people make, right? Okay, and these are the examples actually taken from the real thesis. Okay, I just want to show you that so that it's nothing wrong. It's not don't think that I'm trying to criticize somebody or something, right? It's just that just to showing the real examples will help you to avoid those kind of mistakes, right? Okay, and then you will, like, when you're writing a thesis, then you'll be looking for those kind of mistakes, right? So what are those? Like, okay, for example, here. Okay, um, you understand what the problem here? Actually, insert what? Reference style, right? Okay, so here you're putting, like, like every author's, right? But here abbreviated it like era, right? So again, you have to pay attention of your style. It has to be consistent. If you style in one way, either use this one or this one, but you cannot really do half some place like this and some place like this, right? And it happens because that you cut and pasted, right? Somebody cut and pasted from one journal was using this style, and the other journal was using the other style, right? And then you try to put things together. Then it just really shows that you're not really paying attention, right? Okay. Now here, can you see this? Okay. Here it says this tyrosine residue bind with PI3 kinase, right? Okay. But if we see this picture, it is binding with which? It binding 740, right? So it's like it's saying 751 is here, but this is binding clearly binding here, right? So it means, like, you just took the picture out from some place, put it there, and then not even paying attention that what is happening, right? Okay. Okay, now what's wrong with this? Too many abbreviations. Okay, and what else? The thing is that first is that too many abbreviation, right? Okay, and then the thing is that the picture which is put there is oh, what happened? I think I put things here. I was trying to. Okay, we are here. Okay, the thing is that the figure is there, right? You cannot really read anything in this figure, right? It's just so small, so many abbreviation. So what's the point of putting some figure there? You just want to fill the pages of your thesis, which is not that's not you trying to do, right? But that's what some people try to do. They want to make, like, your thesis look like thicker, so it look like a PhD thesis, right? But that's really not the purpose, right? So the thing is that there's no point using a figure which is not really, nobody can understand, nobody can use any benefit out of this figure. It just looks pretty, it's color, it's abbreviation, and looks very complex, right? So it looks like you are putting something which is nobody can understand, right? So the thing is that there's no point putting anything like that, right? So avoid putting figures, and I've seen in many cases they just put the figures, colorful figures, but it serves no purpose, right? Because things are usually so small that, and the other thing is nothing is explained. Okay, so what is happening? So like I showed the example, like you have to explain everything that that okay, this thing bind to this receptor, it can possibly activate 4 different pathway. Pathway 1 goes through this, pathway 2 goes through this, pathway 3 goes for this. So you have to explain. So if that some person who wants to really like this figure and want to understand, read it here and understand, right? So this again problem here, right? Now this is again classic example. Here, read this, like metastatic melanoma immunotherapy, right? It includes, okay, interleukin-2 interferon alpha 2b for treating metastatic melanoma by enhancing immune response against tumor. And then we have reference, right? One sentence, one entire section, not even a paragraph, right? You have a section heading, and just one sentence. This is not very acceptable. Right? You just show very poor quality, like you're not really uh, not explaining anything. What knowledge you gain, you're not really providing anything, right? Just have you cut and pasted sentence from somewhere and just put it there, right? So you have to explain, metastatic melanoma immunotherapy. So you have to explain, what is immunotherapy, right? If you have not already explain some, you have to have some kind of introductory sentence, and then look like there's the only way, right? Which is not true. There may be some other stages too. So you have to have explain multiple stages and then conclude what exactly that this immunotherapies, they have been very successful, not very successful, or if they're not very successful, what is the problem with them or not. So you have to have some kind of provide some knowledge, right? Here there's nothing is provided, right? It's just like a gap space filling, right? You put the heading, so you have to write, you got a topic and then you have subheadings, and you have to just fill these subheadings, right? Doesn't matter what you write, you just write something. That's what is serving the purpose, right? Second thing is metastatic melanoma targeted therapies, right? These therapies, and again, these include what include. We can understand it's talking about this, right? But then again, it's going to be more than one. It includes like this, right? So this is really very poor way. These therapies include BRF inhibitor, vimorafenib that interferes with the beta RAF MEG ARC pathway, dabrafenib that inhibits some malformed FRAB kinase and whatever temitinib for inhibiting MEG2, right? Again, it's like a one sentence, right? One sentence is also a paragraph and is also a subsection, right? So, when you use a subsection, it should have at least like two paragraph, or even if it's a paragraph, but it has to have a decent size of paragraph, right? Introductory lines, explain a couple of lines, sentences by explanation, and the conclusion, right? Now, what's wrong is there, right? Remember we talk about the use of that, and these therapies include BARF inhibitor. I'm not good reading the chemicals names, right? That interferes, right? Okay, with beta. So how you modify this? Because it's just providing this extra information. So this is the inhibitor, and it's showing that inhibitor does this, right? Okay. So sorry, somebody says something. Okay, so how we change this? No, we have to change the date, right? Remember, we talk about date is very restrictive, right? So these therapies include BF inhibitor, right? Okay. So and this is just an explanation that so remember we put the comma and say which, right? So okay, so these therapies include that BARF inhibitor which interferes with BRAF, MEG and MEG ARC pathway, right? Okay, same as, and then it has to be a full stop here, right? And then and say the other therapy okay inhibits some malform BARF kinase and right. So it is like you see, like when you read, you just like don't feel good, right? Because this it's not right properly, right? Okay. Now can you read this? Let me. Okay. What's wrong here? Okay, read the sentence start from somewhere. The key aim of the proposed study was to investigate the effects of antioxidants on reactive oxygen species, induced cancer survival, proliferation and metastasis at molecular and cellular levels, right? In the following paragraph, the specific objective of the study are described. Okay, what's wrong here?
Colon.
Hmm?
There should be a colon instead of full stop.
Okay. Just one thing, yeah. What? The following?
the paragraph तो नहीं है ना.
Exactly. It says in the following paragraph. Do you think this is a paragraph? No. So I mean, no. Again, this exactly shows that person is just writing and not really paying attention, right? So it says in the following paragraph. Either it has to be a paragraph or you don't say this is a paragraph, right? So it's you just say that these are the following specific objectives, right? And then semicolon. Colon, right? Okay. All right. Now the thing is that when you and there's something extra I'm trying to explain you when you say objectives or specific aim, right? So this is right. Then when you write your synopsis or anything, don't just like this, right? Just bullet points that okay to screen synthetic compound for their potential radical scavenging activity, right? And what you have to do, you have to describe it a little bit more. And again, this is objective and current studies, right? So you have, there's no hypothesis there, right? You have to provide some kind of hypothesis that my hypothesis is, and I'm going to test this hypothesis using the following objectives, right? Okay. So, like, to screen synthetic compound for their potential radical scavenging activity. Okay, so this is the test compound from whatever source, right? Class will be tested for the scavenging effect on free oxygen radical generation from oxidation of in the presence of water, right? You have to describe, it's just the heading, and then you describe exactly what you're going to do, right? Little bit, very small method, right? Just the explanation that how you're going to do this specifically, right? The result will be expressed. How are you going to get the result? We anticipate identification of compound, right, for potential radical scavenging activity, which will be further tested for their effect on cell proliferation. Okay, so you provide some kind of that's your objective or specific aim. Describe how you're going to do it and what you're going to get out of it. Okay, and then you link this to the second specific aim, right? So like we said that anticipate identification compound by for potent radical scavenging activity, which will be further tested for their effect on cell proliferation, right? So next would be maybe the cell proliferation. Specific aim 2 is like cell, to evaluate cell survival, anti-proliferation, anti-migration activity, right? So you link your first specific aim to the second specific aim, saying that okay, we're going to expect that, and then then explain your second specific aim. Then you also introductory sentence or small description about how you're going to do it, what you're going to achieve, and what you expect. Okay, and then you link it to because everything is related, right? Okay, so that's okay. Now fix with 1-to-1 acetone solution for 30 minutes. What's wrong here? Ratio of what? Right. Okay. Is it only one substance? So it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So 1-to-1 ratio, we have one. So okay, acetone. But what is the other substance? Water. It's chloroform. Is methanol? What is you're mixing 1-to-1 with what? Right. Okay. So again, you're writing a materials and method, so you pay attention to that kind of thing. And again, that like 1000 RPM, right? Or 14,000 RPM, right? Now there's two things here. Like there's one style here, 1 comma, and then you write 1000 this way. And here is just 14,000 right in a different way, right? So it's a small is not significant, but you have to make sure that you have a consistent style. Okay. One thing. The second thing is that whenever you write RPMs, right? Whenever you use centrifugation, right? You don't use RPMs. What do you use? G. Okay, that's good. That's great to know that you guys know that. Okay. Why? Because the thing is that RPM is rotation per minute, right? Okay, how fast is rotating, right? Now the thing is that when the things is rotate, right? Okay, it exerts centrifugal force where the particle go at the bottom, right? And then that's how you get the precipitate out, right? Okay. Now the thing is that if you have something like this short and you try to spin, right? Versus you have a long thread and you try to spin. right? So if you have a long tail, you're going to generate more force, right? Okay, it's a shorter string, it's going to generate less force, right? Okay, when you have a longer string, one rotation, two rotation, right? Same as one rotation, two rotation, right? That's RPM, right? Rotation per minute, right? But the thing is that force would be different. Okay, so things sediment because of the force, not because of the rotation. Rotation generate the force, right? So the thing is that 1,000 rotation we do like this would maybe equal to one rotation like this, right? Because there's more force, there is a less force here, right? But if we say 800 G, right? It means 800 G is a force. So depending on the centrifuge, with different centrifuge, like their center and then the bucket, right? They are big, they can be small, right? So their distance, the radius is different, right? So their rotation could be any rotation, but the rotation determine how many force they're going to generate, right? So if you want to have more force, more G, there'll be higher rotation, right? But centrifuge is big, it's lower rotations, you can generate a lot of force, right? So always convert those rotation into G, and there's a formula, okay? And then it's basically based on their radius, right? Usually the centrifuge machines, when they come with the chart. It shows that this is that many RPMs is equal to that many, a G. So always write in G. Okay. Now, here's again, there's sometimes people write things and then they forget to add, right? For example, here it says the IUPAC names free radical scavenging activities and IC50's values are presented in table 1.1, right? Whereas, right, the structure of compound are given in table 1.2, right? First thing is that you have to use a comma here, right? Okay, and then this is table 1.1, okay? And then if you see at the structure I'm giving in table 1.2, right? Okay, here is the rest of the table, and there is a next section here, right? There is no table 1.2. So you say something, but you don't include it, okay? Which is kind of, again, shows that you're not really, you wrote your thesis, but you never even bother reading it again, right? And you just say, well, okay, fill the page, it looks thick, then it's ready to go, okay? Now here, I'm showing this example because if I just give you an example, if these are real examples, right? You will not believe me that people make that kind of mistakes, right? But these are from real thesis, right? Now here it shows data are presented as percentage of control. Okay, but you see here, how is data presented? Yeah, it's not it's like a OD. Okay, raw data. The data has not even analyzed or manipulated, right? Percentage control means you have to assume the control is 100%, and then recalculate everything according to the control, right? Because you assume control is 0%. Where is the control? So the control is here somewhere, right? Do you understand what I mean? Like, you're saying something, but you don't know. Like, so what happens that people, they after usually what they do is that when they write figure legends, so some of these things are like same. So, for example, you have like 10 different compounds. You did the proliferation studies, right? And then what you do, you write the legend for one, and then you cut past 10 times, right? But sometimes people forget to change the name of the compound. So you have the same compound. What only they do is that they change the title a little bit, but the rest of the description is same, right? And then they think they fix the problem. But sometimes the compound again name shows here. So say, well, this compound shows here, but they use this compound here. So again, it's just for negligence, right? Not paying attention, right? Okay. Now similar kind of thing here. It says optical density of untreated cell was considered as 100%, right? Okay, here they give the optical density, but then where is percentage, right? This again, this like optical density of untreated cell, DMEM, was considered as 100%. So it's like confusing, you consider 100%, so what, this data really not showing any of that thing, right? Okay, here is another interesting thing. Okay, the graph shows percentage anti-migration effect. Okay, and here what it says, it's a percentage cell migration, right? Okay, so again, the thing is that What is anti-migration? Either you're not migrating or you migrate, right? What is anti-migration? I mean, can anybody explain me anti-migration? Well, there's no anti-migration, or maybe you go and then come back, right? So, I mean, but then, so this is a very stupid thing to do, right? You're introducing a term which does not really make any sense. Okay, you say anti-proliferation, like cell non-proliferating, okay. Sorry?
Any anti-migration can be, like if we not take the cells and take the example of something else, we have two solutions where if we have bridge away. So one solution, if it is more concentrated, can migrate towards something.
Yeah.
Right, and if there is indeed a compound that, for example, stops the migration, it can be settled in.
Yeah, it's inhibiting migration, but like it's not anti-migration, right? It's inhibiting migration, but it's it's anti. It's like it's like a very difficult to explain to me. For me, like what is anti-migration? If something to me it looks like somebody migrating, you push it back, right? But that's not the case. They're not just migrating; they're migrating slow, right? Or they're not migrating as much as like other, right? So this entire migration does not really, mean. Anyway, if you think that, like if I accept your explanation, that the problem is then you have to write the same heading here too, right? You say entire migration. So it's again, it's like 100% migration control, right? Okay. So here is like, the thing is that these two graphs, okay, they're more migration, right? Here is showing the graph showing entire migration. So it means there's some, okay, there may be entire migration, but this is migration, right? So again, it's like, it's not really consistent what is shown in the graph, right? So maybe I think my point is that don't introduce something which is confusing, which only you can understand, right? Maybe you have to use something like, make more sense, right? So it's like, you can say the graph show inhibition of, migration inhibition. That's what is exactly happening, right? You're inhibiting the migration. Anti-migration to me is like, don't come. You're coming, you might going another place, right? And so somebody is saying that, hey, don't come to our house, right? So you have anti-migration, right? But the process of migration is not really anti, right? So okay, now this is again bar equal to 100 millimeter, right? And you see the bar is here, right? Okay, so you think that'd be 100 millimeter, this size? 100 millimeter is equal to 10 centimeter, right? And you know how 10 centimeter they big are? They are, right? Okay, so I mean so if this size is 10 centimeter, right? So I mean these cells are really big, right? So again, I think there's something wrong. Okay, so I don't know what was, it's probably nanometer. Okay. So anyway, I'm just showing all these. You think this person should get their PhD or not? With all these mistakes. Now, if you fail the person, then it would be all, that it's the supervisor fault, or it's, it's not going to be candidate fault. Like, candidate, did, and then, okay. Now, here it is. It says DMSO, right? And the compound is DMEM. Again, there are two different things. DMEM is is like a media, right? DMEM is a media for people who are using cell culture. DMSO is a solvent, right? Which you use as a control, right? Again, and then again, it's like, the figure 34B, whereas this is figure is 3.34B. And there's maybe a typo, but then you have to correct it, right? Okay. Now, oh, this is interesting. Okay. See this figure. So what it is that So this is a graph, right? This is a TOR, there's a protein, right? It's like I think it's serine 2445, 2004, there's a residue, I think, and then there's another protein, it's tyrosine phosphorylated, and then this is like ERK1 and 2 phosphorylated in different places, right? I can understand this. Okay, this is DMSO treated, right? And this is compound they use, right? So they showing the inhibition of phosphorylation, right, of this protein, right? It's very clear, right? Okay, now it says compound 11. Okay, so they use compound, which is this one, compound 11, right? Compound 11 inhibits mTOR signal transaction pathway of melanoma proliferation and migration via PDGF and EGF. Okay, I can understand here they're inhibiting the mTOR signaling. These are the member of mTOR signaling pathway. Via PDGF and EGF. Does this really figure shows that inhibiting through PDGF receptor or EGF receptor? Right? So why why you using this your title? Your title is saying something different what you are showing, right? Okay, now human metastatic melanoma, 375 cells were treated 6 hours with 1 micromolar compound 11 or DMSO control, right? Compound 11 was found to transduce its signal across the plasma membrane via deep phosphorylation of Y571 and tyrosine 1086 residue of PDGF and EGF receptor. Is there anything shown is here? Like there's no, right? Okay, there's it's just like we infer, right? It's a figure, and it's like describing the data, right? We infer that deep phosphorylation of serine 2448, okay, which is this one, on TOR is the most robust effect of this compound. Okay, result in the inhibition of mTOR pathway of melanoma cell proliferation. Well, this is like a description of your results, right? Okay, and not this result, other results in this figure, right? So again, this is all unnecessarily, discussed, right? It's not supposed to be here. It's a discussion. This is a part of figure legend. Okay, so you're not supposed to do things like that. Okay, how are we doing time-wise? Oh, it's time here. Sorry. Okay, we are almost getting close, right? Okay, some more example like densitometric analysis, right? Okay, it's just a densitometric blot, right? It does not show any analysis, right? It just shows these are the plots, right? Analysis means that you have actually the densitometry. Analysis means you have actually measured the densitometrically, right? But it's not densitometrically analysis, right? It's just a dot plot. So the figure says density, so it should be what? Dot plot of whatever, right? Not the densometrically analysis. Okay. Now this one, what was wrong with this? Okay. Again, the percentage protection in body weight, right? What is missing here? So these are control, negative, positive control, and I have no idea what is x-axis. And this is about in the every figure there is no y-axis. Okay, and then they just think that you put it here and people will understand. I can understand what it is in a person, but then the figure there's x-axis and y-axis. You're supposed to have both, right? And not only that, you have to have units. What it is, it's in a percentage. You have to put down in bracket is a percentage, right? Okay. Now in this one, like it says, results tested as the average plus minus standard deviation, right? A and B equal to P02, 0.001 and 0.021. Supposed to be a comma here respectively, in contrast with negative control, right? Now you cannot use this word in contrast, the comparison, right? Contrast means two different things, right? So you are compare things, but not so there's again okay, Sam, it's like a next table in the same thesis, right? What it says is the results showed as average of standard deviation plus when correlated with negative control, right? Again, the correlation is a statistical term. You have to have some kind of analysis done, right? So this candidate or this person whoever's thesis was has throughout the thesis using words which is really, wherever, some, half of the figures is correlated, somewhere it says, compare, some places a contrast, not very consistent, right? And some of these terms are not really accurate. Right? You're not supposed to use correlated here, right? Yes. With respect to, you can say, yeah, because best thing is you say is compare to. That's what people typically use. So it's not less confusing, right? So you're comparing one thing to other thing, right? Okay. Respect when it's become how relative it is. So I think that's the end. I had a lot more examples, but there was the things which are really very common, right? Okay. Now the thing is that, and again, this is not, I'm not trying to put any say anything bad about anybody. It's just, I took the examples from the thesis just to show you that, that kind of things, and this is very common. In every thesis, people just not paying attention what they're writing. So the purpose is that hopefully you guys don't make that kind of mistakes. Okay. All right, so I stop here. If you have any question, what I'll do, I'll make the handout and they will email it to you. Okay, so, and you have probably my email address or not, but now I don't know if I can write it here. Probably not, I think I cannot write. So anyway, I will send the email address with the handouts, so you can, if you have any question, anything, so you can always contact me. All right, well, thank you very much. I hope it's not too boring and you're still everybody awake. How many people are already gone to sleep? Still awake? Okay. All right, okay. Well, thank you very much. It's not, I know it's a lot to learn, right? And it's been, 3 days, but hopefully, let's see if, how did you calculate these values? Which one are you talking about? I'm not sure what. Okay, this question is, what about certificates? How it will be distributed among the participants? Do you know that?
E-certificates.
E-certificates. So everybody will get the e-certificate. Yes, a lot of people ask for sharing the presentation. So we will make I'll give the handouts to pass on. So that's good. We have like about 83 participants this time. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay.
Question.
Sure.
Sometimes when you paraphrase some sentences,
Mhm.
then it gets blurry. So, like that, you have to put short the sentence.
Mhm.
What do you do with that?
Well, it depends on the sentence. So the thing is that you have to paraphrase it, right? And then actually, when you paraphrase it, usually it become like shorter, or sometimes it become longer too. I mean, depends on how you paraphrase it. But if you cannot make it shorter, or you think that if you're going to make it shorter, you're going to lose the meaning, then it's okay. You just can leave it like that.
Again, there will be plagiarism.
Hmm?
Again, there will be plagiarism in certain cases.
Is there?
Plagiarism.
Well, you think that you're already rephrasing it, so should be okay. Yeah. Yeah, wording, yeah. As long as it's not the same word and not in the same sequence, yeah, you can just the best thing is that sometimes you can just put the last part first and the first part last. Introduce things like although, and then you can things, or you can put some kind of few more words in there, or remove something, or sometimes they have a sequence of the words, right? Like this happens, like number of diseases, so you can change the position of diseases, right? So that it won't come as taken out from one place. So there are ways to do it to make it clear. All right. Anything else? No. Thank you. Definitely. And I can. Where's my